What's going on, everybody, and welcome back into the stream. B-Schaeff Daily Live coming at you. Give people a few moments here to file in as I go through my routine of figuring out if the technology is working. Let me know if you can see me. Let me know if you can hear me. And I scheduled it to begin at 11:10 Central. I started a minute and a half or so early, because my hope is that the stream will be going swimmingly, tech-wise, and I can just get started with the real thing right around 11:10. What's going on? I see a few channel members already in the live chat. Simply join and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to join the live chat. I think that is the only stipulation, and that doesn't cost you anything. But if you want to have a pretty green name and a badge next to you, then that costs you a couple bucks. Brett has me. All right. Looks and sounds good. Thanks, Lakota. Allison Hunter wants to go Edmond for Shohei. I do not sound like an Autobot. Yeah, here's the deal. I try to get through everybody's comments, right? But it may be that I have to kind of zip through the comments a little bit so that I can see, especially tonight, if I sound like a robot. That's good information to have. Or if Tommy Edmond is a Dodger and I need to probably do something about that. As far as, posting a story or something. BJ wants the trade scoops. Clearly, I won't be working the phones very much while I'm talking on here. But look, man, there's a lot of smoke out there, it seems, right now. So will we have a trade tonight before everybody goes to bed? Probably not, but it seems plausible enough. I mean, there's a lot that seems to be happening behind the scenes. So I want y'all's questions, comments, thoughts. We're going to talk about the Tommy Edman stuff. I don't know how much outside of the report from Ari Alexander that has really been out there regarding Edman. I haven't seen a lot of others reporting about it, but from just a philosophical standpoint, it's very interesting to me. A lot of what it would entail if the Cardinals are really considering moving Edman for Eric Fetty, which was the tweet from Ari Alexander, who is a sports reporter down in Houston. I'm going to save some of that explanation for the pod because I want to make sure that it is discussed. Brett says, if I don't get a Twitter notification from Jeff Passan that has St. Louis Cardinals in it, I might go crazy. Yeah, I'm just going to be counting on you guys there in the comments to let me know if craziness is happening. And that'll help me to be able to do what I need to do. Okay. Like the stream. We've only got 3 likes on the stream. There's more people than 3 in here. So if y'all could give it a like. The only stipulation to be able to join the live chat is to subscribe to the channel, which is free. We do have the Discord that I want to plug here before I get started. That's up to almost 200 members and a lot of Cardinals fans having some great conversation in there. Be nice to each other in the Discord, though. Let's not do anything crazy in there. And what was the other thing? Oh, YouTube membership. A lot of, I think like 34 people support this channel as YouTube members. There's a couple different tiers you can do. One of them gives you a benefit in the Discord, but anybody that wants to check that out, I believe I have all those links in the description here to this video. So without any further ado, hopefully it's fine as far as the tech. I can't really control that. I do have a StreamYard subscription now, though, so I think the next time, if I have a little more time, I'm going to try to set it up, the live stream through that next time, and I might even be able to do it on Twitter too, but I don't even know if I want to. But this time I'm still using my old broadcast software, so hopefully no issues. But with that being said, let's get it going. And drop the comments in there because I want to talk a little bit about the game, mostly just how good it is that they won it and didn't lose it because of Goldschmidt's home run. But mostly I think it's going to be kind of trade chatter and report stuff that we're hearing. So, all right, without any further ado, we're going to begin the B-Schaeff Daily. I'll put this out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts as well. It'll be out as its own audio file on YouTube, too. So hit subscribe. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of B-Schaeff Daily Live. We are live tonight, Sunday, July 28th, 2024. The trade deadline is less than 48 hours away at this point. And tonight, for the first time, it really feels like the Cardinals are in the center of it all. If you're following along on social media, I'm going to be counting on you guys, by the way, out there in the comments section to be able to help me out and let me know if there's anything imminent that's happening that I need to be maybe not in front of a microphone live streaming as a result of. But for now, we're going to talk about some of the stuff that's been out there today. We're talking about the game, the fact the Cardinals came back and found a way to beat the Washington Nationals on Sunday. Paul Goldschmidt walk-off home run was cool to see that moment for him. And boy, did the Cardinals really need it. And I feel like Cardinals fans kind of needed it as well. Just think, if I had sent the tweet after a series that ends 2 days before the deadline against the Nationals because the Cardinals were swept by the Nationals, that would not have been a good time for anybody. So it's avoided because of what they were able to do in the walk-off by Paul Goldschmidt. But a lot of the conversation around the Cardinals in the hours since this afternoon's game has obviously been pertaining to the trade market and what's going on. And now maybe Tommy Edman could be a name that's on the move, even though we haven't seen him play for the Cardinals yet this season. So a lot going on. Get your comments in. Join the live chat by subscribing to the channel for free. And we'll just go ahead and get right into it. I don't really have it. I'm not even going to go with a preamble. I'm just going to start picking through the comments for some of the best stuff, and we'll just go from there. Yeah, Micah chiming in with Jordan Walker for Eric Fetty straight up. Who says no? So evidently that's something that was out there. It was reported by one outlet that I saw that basically, the White Sox decided they could at least ask about Jordan Walker in relation to Eric Fetty. And I tweeted it out because I thought it was kind of comedic how long that conversation might have been. It gave me joy to imagine, how long that does. Hey, so what do you guys think? You like Eric Fetty? And Cardinals are like, yeah, we like Eric Fetty. He's cost controlled. What's not to like? Pitching well this year. Very interesting. What do we? You want to talk names? Yeah, we're thinking Jordan Walker's not really helping you guys this year. He's in your minor leagues. Click. Yeah, I don't think that one lasted particularly long. Look, if you were before all the weirdness surrounding Garrett Crochet and his demands, I think that's going to be all that it takes to get him not traded at this deadline. But before all that was going on, I thought, I don't know. I could see a world in which the Cardinals, if they're going to trade Walker in anything, you might say, hey, you've got Garrett Crochet. What about Luis Robert? Is there a package we can put together? And maybe he's a centerpiece in it. But what's so difficult about that is the Cardinals obviously value Jordan Walker up here because he was the number one prospect. And I think internally, hopefully there is still the belief that he's going to make good on all that promise that it seemed he had. And heck, it wasn't just unrealized potential. He did it last year with a 787 OPS for not quite a full season because he spent some time in Memphis. But, Jordan Walker was doing the darn thing last year. So for the Cardinals, it's like you're not going to trade him as the guy that's got a 6-something OPS in Memphis. You can't treat him that way. But also, if you are intending to move him because if you don't believe long-term that he's going to reach the potential you thought he could, you're not going to get the value of, top prospect because there have been things that have happened since then. So that's typically when two teams are going to probably have reason to value a player at very different levels. That's typically a reason to believe that a deal's not going to get done regarding that player. And that's kind of the way I look at it when it comes to Jordan Walker. But to say that Eric Fetty, and look, Eric Fetty might be a Cardinal tomorrow, so I'm not going to rip the guy. But I just think we're all in agreement here. There's a safe space, right? That the Cardinals aren't going to move Jordan Walker in the context of Eric Fetty. Now, their interest in Fetty to begin with is somewhat notable because right now, who leaves the Cardinals rotation if they acquire Eric Fetty tomorrow? I'm talking about the stretch run of 2024. If that wasn't a consideration, I think Eric Fetty actually makes even more sense for the Cardinals, especially in light of the reports that we have seen this evening. I know John Denton put it out there, and I know Katie Wu put it out there, that basically, according to their sources, the Cardinals are maybe going to have to tighten the purse strings a little bit. That's the message from ownership, according to these reports, that the front office is sort of gearing up to know that, hey, adding significant salary at this deadline for future years is not something the Cardinals are really looking to do. So if that's the case, how pull that thread, extend that out. How far does that really go? How deep does that go as far as the Cardinals? Well, is it just they can't add payroll, or are they looking next year to say might have to trim some payroll? And look, if I wanted to conspiracy theory the whole thing, when you talk about some outside influence in the front office with Chaim Bloom coming in this past offseason in an advisory role, right? He's not running the club, but he's doing some important work for the club, for John Mozeliak, as Mo has alluded to multiple times. What's interesting is, if you just think about the background of Chaim Bloom, what was he successful doing? He was in Tampa running, helping to run an organization in a baseball ops department on a small budget and figuring out ways to win anyway, right? So that's maybe applicable to what the Cardinals are looking to do in 2025. Might be reasonable to want to have a guy like that around with that experience. He goes to Boston, and what did ownership there want him to do? Trade Mookie Betts, lighten the payroll up, but still try to figure out a way to do more with less. And now, Chaim Bloom is involved with the Cardinals. So if there's some traction to this notion that maybe the payroll stuff is a little bit more bleak than we had publicly realized before, I mean, that could get interesting really quickly, and I think would explain partially why, and again, this is the report from Ari Alexander, if you haven't seen it yet, and he's a Mizzou-made guy, and has reported on baseball dealings before. I had a couple of people say, well, who's Ari Alexander? Well, he's put baseball reports out there. I can recall most recently when Adam Kloffenstein was called up for the Cardinals to pitch at Rickwood Field. He was the first one to report that, and he is based in Houston. But the report, as I'm scrolling through my timeline here to find it, he said that sources indicate to him the Dodgers, Cardinals, and White Sox have discussed the framework of a 3-team trade. The Dodgers working to acquire Tommy Edman. Cardinals are interested in Eric Fetty of the White Sox. No deal in place at the moment. So, that's kind of where a lot of this is coming from. And if it's the case, like Tommy Edman's making, somebody can correct me on this, but it was a 2-year, bought him out of the arbitration process. And I saw Baseball Reference had him at 9.5 next year. I think backloaded a little bit compared to what the salary would be this year. Fetty, I believe, is $7.5 million next year. So if the primary, I think you have to almost look at two different tracks at this point. Are the Cardinals trying to win in 2024 and make their team better for this stretch run, or are they having to consider some things because of the perception of potentially salary implications and payroll implications not being as freewheeling as everybody would hope that it could be next year, and speculate away as far as why that might be? We know the Bally Sports situation is what it is. We know that there are uncertainties about maybe ticket sales and fan support and what that could look like, because, I mean, if you're out of the ballpark this season, you're among friends, but it's a more intimate gathering than it had been in recent years. And it's not just like, in April because there was school not let out. It's so hot in July. I mean, it's just been all year that you haven't had the type of visuals at Busch that you're used to seeing as Cardinals fans. So those tickets have been sold for this year, right? But if this is another year that doesn't end the way that Cardinals fans are hoping to see, and they're given consistent rhetoric from the front office and ownership of, we're putting the best product on the field that we can, but just be patient with us and we'll figure it out. And it's like you kind of feel stuck in the mud. I could see the fan base really kind of deteriorating even a little bit more so from a support standpoint for next year. And if your ownership, you do eventually probably take that into consideration of, all right, we might have to slow our roll a little bit. And look, I'm not stumping for that, because my stance is that's incredibly disappointing if that's what's going to happen here, not only at this deadline, but next offseason for the Cardinals as they try to build the best roster they can. The payroll implications, I mean, we've always felt like you could spend more, right? That's been the public sentiment. The Cardinals are consistently going to say otherwise and say that that's, y'all have heard the various quotes from both DeWitts at this point in time of, it not being a profitable business, owning a baseball team, and we could go on and on. Not really trying to relitigate all that, but I do think whether you think as a fan it should be a factor, it seems as though this kind of stuff could end up being a factor. My hair looks silly. I got to fix that. And by the way, the T-shirt I'm wearing tonight is the Hastings Layers Premium Eggs shirt my guy Mark got me. I said I was going to wear it the next time I streamed, and here I am doing it. I wish it was like a little bit more on camera, but shout out to Hastings Layers. They sponsor, of course, the Down on the Farm segment when we do that on B-Schaeff Daily, which you can subscribe to on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, in addition to this YouTube channel. Anyway, as we're talking about this payroll stuff, man, it's interesting because in my heart of hearts, do I believe that the Cardinals in their front office would envision trading away a healthy Tommy Edman, which right away we have to acknowledge that we don't know that they have one of those just yet. He was 0 for 5 tonight with 4 strikeouts in Double-A, but that's just a rehab assignment. We're not going to go crazy on that. But is he going to play the field? Is he going to be able to be the defensive presence and shortstop and center field, moving around as a utility guy and being good at all of those spots that he has historically been for the Cardinals? Like, there are some uncertainties, I think, that we just haven't seen yet from Edman. I wouldn't think that the ankle sprain that has kind of limited him from joining the festivities in the field yet is going to be a long-term concern. But it's a little bit odd that we're kind of still waiting to see what that looks like for him. And it's not that, the trade deadline is going to come and go. And if Tommy Edman's still here, he's in St. Louis the next day. Like, it's still going to be, you'd have to think, a week, 10 days. We haven't seen him play the field. So we can't necessarily treat Tommy Edman as this guarantee for the final stretch run of the season to provide thump against left-handed pitching, which he does when healthy, to provide quality center field defense, which he does when healthy, and to be, frankly, I think it's worth discussing, a quality option at shortstop, to where if you're starting to think about the utility of this bench and some of the players on it, like a Brandon Crawford, I know the Cardinals like him. I know he brings a lot to the table in that room, but I also think that nobody can be immune from conversations about are there ways to improve the roster on the periphery when a team is kind of just on the outside looking in of a wild card spot, and there should be a sense of urgency from the organization to get there and to get to October because, well, they told the fan base there would be after last season's disaster. So, I'm kind of holding the front office to that standard of if big moves aren't possible at this deadline, if you can't make a blockbuster happen, if you'd like to add a big name bat, but a Brent Rooker's not being traded, if that's the world in which the Cardinals are operating, I am sympathetic to that. However, I do think that would then point to where can you improve? Can some difficult decisions be made? Should some difficult decisions be made that on the periphery of the roster, the bench we know just doesn't have very much utility. It's not a good bench. It's not a versatile bench. And are there ways to improve the team even on the margins that could end up being difference-making, whether it's a game or two down the stretch, that could honestly be the difference between getting in or not getting into the playoffs if you're the Cardinals this year. If that is the way it shakes out and the way people feel about it, well, I would make the case that a healthy Tommy Edman would limit the need for a Brandon Crawford and what he's currently providing. The offensive numbers are what they are. He's done a nice job filling in at shortstop and has been willing to take on whatever role they've asked of him. And there are a lot of commendable aspects about that. But look, there's not a thing I just said about Brandon Crawford that I don't think would have been said about Giovanni Gallegos. And Giovanni Gallegos has been on this Cardinals team for more than 4 months, right? It's been more than 4 years for Gio, and yet they cut him today. So if it's the time for hard decisions, then it is. But the Cardinals don't have Tommy Edman healthy, ready to come in and play backup shortstop. So this is not the current conversation. It's just very interesting as you start to think about all the things the Cardinals could be weighing if they're wondering about Edman and Eric Fetty, if that's the basis of a deal that you would be potentially pursuing. It strikes me as potentially, if this comes to fruition, being more motivated by protecting against things falling off the rails in 2025 than I would like to see for the Cardinals on July 28th, 2024. Because I believe that the front office owes the fan base, and you guys out there tell me if I'm wrong. You're the fan base. You're the people I'm talking about. I believe it is owed to try and maximize this season within reason. You're not going to sell off the future to do it. You're not going to trade top prospects for rentals. You're not going to do anything crazy like that. But within reason, be aggressive in the margins that are available to you to improve 2024. Now, just trading the concept, Tommy Edman for Eric Fetty, in preview for 2024, maybe, but as I alluded, who are you taking out of the rotation? If the Cardinals have a starter, stub his toe and he's out for the season on August 15th, well, then you'll be glad that you had Eric Fetty in the fold, because if you didn't, well, there's nobody to go out and get at that point. The trade deadline is passed. So I do appreciate that the Cardinals could potentially be looking ahead a little bit on this thing and saying, hey, having a guy around, does it mean moving somebody to the bullpen for a little while that doesn't deserve it? Perhaps. But it's better than not having it when you need it later on in the process. So that's something that I kind of wonder if the Cardinals are thinking about that and having to make a hard decision. And would it be Palante that would go to the pen? It shouldn't be, in my opinion. But then again, the rest of the guys are 34 years or older and they're veterans, and that's kind of the way baseball be sometimes. So that is a little bit tricky, but it's something the Cardinals can get over if they believe they are fortifying against the potential of washing out a rotation when they don't trust their pitching depth in AAA. And in fairness, some of their AAA depth has been injured and has not been, relied upon even down there in the minors lately. They've got a bunch of different guys that have had to start games for Memphis. So all of this is kind of swirling in my brain. The perfect version of Tommy Edman, I think, is exactly what the Cardinals need. The healthy version where he comes back and he assumes that 803 career OPS against left-handed pitching that he currently holds in 615 career plate appearances against lefties. That's like a full major league season's worth, and he's an over 800 OPS. It's really good. This Cardinals team ranks 29th in batting average against lefties, 29th in OPS against lefties in Major League Baseball. I believe only the Marlins are worse in both categories. And that's a team that contains Paul Goldschmidt. That's a team that contains Nolan Arenado. That is a concern. Those two guys and the struggles that they have had this season, I think, contribute to that significantly. Having a right-handed batter, Jordan Walker, not perform and not be here right now has contributed to that, obviously, to a great extent. And not having Tommy Edman, who, like, when you look at the reason the Cardinals have been good against lefties in past years, like, Edman's been around. Granted, you can think back to 2022 when they just assaulted lefties. Albert Pujols was here, and we all know what he was doing the second half of the season. So that's part of the reason on that front. But, yeah, Tommy Edman can help you there. And what else do you need? Okay, if I'm just playing, wish casting, Cardinals could probably use a guy who could play some center field that hits right-handed. All right, well, Edman does that too. He could platoon with Michael Ciani, and then, hey, maybe if you wanted to find more utility to the bench, it'd be nice if this guy could also play shortstop. I know that's a tough ask, but, man, talk about to kill two birds with one stone. Oh, yeah, Tommy Edman can do that too. Like, well, holy bleep, this guy is tailor-made in a lab for exactly what the Cardinals need at this trade deadline. I hate to use the phrase, it'd be like making a trade, but for Tommy Edman to come back to this Cardinals team, it'd be kind of like making a trade because he would fill almost three different roles. He could fill Crawford's role. He could fill Dylan Carlson's role, which is, I think on the way out anyway. I don't know if they'll look, if this White Sox, Dodgers, Cardinals thing happens and Dylan Carlson's not a White Sox, that is a bummer for Dylan Carlson. Like straight up, because he would get a chance probably there, especially if Tommy, and I don't know if the Cardinals are going to want Tommy Pham, but talk about also, okay, right hand. If you're doing the Edman thing, what would you then need to replace? Well, probably that outfielder on your bench that can hit right-handed. Swap Carlson and Pham, and there you go. Pham hits lefties. That's really all this boils down to for me. Although I don't know that Pham could still play center field. That's the part of it that probably doesn't work. But frankly, I mean, Carlson does not, look good in center field. So anyway, all these thoughts are kind of swirling through my head. But the main thing is the Edman $9.5 million or whatever it is for next year, payroll implication of that, and almost like, is there a level of concern that's, we better get an Eric Fetty now because he's $7.5 million. He's got a 3 ERA. That's pretty darn good. And if we don't get him now, what will the payroll situation be in the offseason, and what will ownership allow us to do? Like, if that is the consideration right now and the front office is having to weigh that as part of what they're doing at this deadline, that stinks. That stinks for you guys. That stinks for Cardinals fans because that's not what was promised. And I get it. They've been thinking about this Bally thing, and that's been swirling, right? There are some implications that maybe are beyond their control. But that stinks for Cardinals fans because I don't know if a healthy Tommy Edman being on the Dodgers is the best thing for the Cardinals over the next 2 months when you don't really need imminently to replace your fifth starter, right? Like, this is more of a 2025 move or a moving against the potential to have somebody go down and then not being able to do anything about it within your rotation. That's like my overarching thoughts on this. I know I went on a rant, but I wanted to get that out there. And by the way, if a trade is happening right now, I gotta keep refreshing to see if I'm missing something, because that would then be, I would need to do some stuff about that. But I want to get to Eric's comment because he did kindly leave a super chat, and so I want to make sure to read his comment, even though a little bit late on that. He said, IMO, if you trade for Fetty, it also assists the bullpen. Palante goes to the pen. That obviously helps the pen. You would need a right-handed bat, but unfortunately, I doubt that's happening. Yeah, and a rental bat, too. It could be a rental, and I almost don't even care positionally what the guy plays. If you trade Edman, you need somebody who can hit lefties. Mark Canha has been thrown out there as a possibility. I think there are enough rentals out there that the Cardinals could do it, but if you're waiting for the perfect move, sometimes you have to be willing to go, you know what, we've lost trades in the past. We're going to lose trades in the future. Sometimes you just have to, it takes something to get something, and been willing to go to the very end there and make something happen. That, yeah. Daddy Padre says, no offense, b-schaeff, but Edman hasn't even touched the field yet. Would take Pham and Fetty. Look, man, I'm not caping for Tommy Edman to stay. I just want to lay out all of the, I like Tommy Edman a lot, but I want to lay out all the factors to me. And Carl, I alluded to the fact that I was going to sound, foolish. Schaeffer is talking like, when so-and-so comes back, it's like making a trade for free. The fact that you put the JFC man in your comment indicates you're taking what I'm saying way too seriously, way too much to heart. I even acknowledged, I was self-referential to the fact that, yeah, I know that's like the common thing that everybody says, but legitimately a healthy Edman is what I would want the Cardinals to go trade for at the deadline. Put it that way. If the phrasing of, well, it's like making a trade, which Mo hasn't said in, 5 years? I don't know when the last time he said that was, but the notion of what do the Cardinals need, this, that, and that, and he checks all those boxes, it's like, okay, don't trade that guy away because you might have him in 2 weeks. That's really the point that I'm trying to make. That being said, Daddy Padre's point, Edman hasn't touched the field. He's not playing defensively on these rehab assignments. Yeah, if you can take a bird in the hand, that is probably better than the bird in the bush or two in the bush. In this case, if you're getting Fetty and maybe a Tommy Pham, I don't want to talk too much about that because I don't think it's realistic. I don't think the Cardinals want him. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think somebody like that, a person who can play the outfield, who can hit right-handed and do well against left-handed pitching, that would be exactly, I think, what it would need to be. So Eric said, yeah, it's been forever, but people like to hang on to nonsense. Well, and that is also why I have a podcast with Josh called Philosophical Differences. I have a podcast with Charlie called Low Hanging Fruit. It's kind of just, let's have fun with it. Let's not actually get mad about some of this stuff. We get it. Mo says stuff that's funny, and then you take it and you never let go of it, and that's the way the world go round. But anyway, that's what's going on here. By the way, if you're joining in and you would like to hop into the live chat, all you got to do is subscribe to the channel. I've been putting out Cardinals content every single day of this season, except for the 4 days that I was in Panama City and hanging out there on the beach for 4 days. Every other day of the year since March 28th, pretty much, I've put something out on this YouTube channel. So if you like Cardinals content, probably would behoove to subscribe for free. Okay, I'm going to try to get into some of these other comments now that I've sort of broken down my thoughts on the Edman thing. My main takeaway is those reports about Payroll being a constraint. Is that why the Fetty thing? Because he is controllable for next year. And then, yeah, you feel like there's an easier path to potentially grabbing a right-handed bat somewhere. Maybe it's Jordan Walker. Like, you call him up and say, you haven't been great in Memphis, but, this is going to, the natives are restless, and this is going to placate some people because, look, you're still Jordan Walker, so just come up here, man, and do your thing. Be you. Because right now it could be starting to get into a guy's head that he's been down for as long as he's been and probably didn't think that was going to be the way of his world this year. So I wouldn't necessarily mind calling him back up in an event where you had somewhere to put him, right? You had an obvious spot to play him because of the trades that you might be making at this time. So that's sort of my thought process is the Cardinals might be thinking the payroll is a thing. And if ownership isn't going to allow us to extend, we might just have to go ahead and do something like this now to make sure that we don't get caught with our pants down in the offseason with a need at starter and an ownership group telling us you can't go buy one. Like that would be the scenario for 25 that would be bad. But a lot of Cardinals fans would rightfully say, well, what good is that anyway? If you're saying we're going to make sure we put together a rotation that is good enough to do what? To have this same sort of season where maybe it ends with 82 wins and you don't get in the playoffs. That's really talking about being in the middle. And I know a lot of Cardinals fans are not very interested in staying in the middle. 43 likes on the stream. Appreciate y'all, but we have more viewers than that. Hit subscribe, throw your comment in, and then hit like. It'll take you 40 seconds. We can get up to 70. I'm targeting Mark McGuire likes today. 70 likes. We can do it. Josh, what's up, man? Glad you're on this live. Brett says, even though this year's deadline is high-key bumming me out, I'm always going to be here to celebrate a walk-off win. Enjoy the great chat. Insightful live Cardinals chat with b-schaeff. Well, thanks, Brett. Appreciate that. How much would you bet on the Cardinals making or not making a playoff spot? Well, I'm not going to bet on it myself. Y'all can do that. But I would say look at the odds first, and that'll as in any betting conversation, no matter the sport, look at the odds. Like, you're not going to just blindly say, oh, yeah, I'll bet that they will if they're not favored to do so. That's going to be the first thing. I think they'll get in, but it's a coin flip. I think really it is about as a coin flip right now because you've got, 6 teams for 3 spots. And frankly, I am not as inclined to consider that the Braves aren't going to figure it out because they'll probably make the trades that they need to have the rotation that they need. And then eventually they'll get guys like Max Fried back. They have been just ravaged by injury. And yet they're still just kind of plugging along. They're back in their winning ways now. They had a big losing streak, but they're 8 games above 500. They're in a fine spot. Cardinals are a game out of a spot right now. They also have the Diamondbacks to worry about, who are a half game behind the Mets. So the Cardinals will have to hop them. But the Pirates are above 500 still. I mean, they're a game behind St. Louis. The Giants are charging hard now with 4 straight wins. They're not selling anybody. I wouldn't think. The Cubs made a move today to pick up Isaac Paredes from the Rays, and they had to give up Christopher Morel, who I think they just hate in Chicago, so they traded him. But Paredes is a good player in the Cubs. You never know, man. There's a lot going on there. So to even say it's a coin flip you might call that a homer take, because statistically, there's more teams than just the six that could actually work their way back in. And the Cardinals are currently on the outside looking in of it. I'm going to be inclined to believe that they can do it, though, because I've seen enough from them this year, in my opinion, to think that there's juice there. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that everything's been great. I mean, look, we'd be having a really different conversation if one game this afternoon had gone differently. Goldy with the walk-off was needed. Michaelis gave him enough today. Your bullpen was solid, and they manufactured enough runs to be able to get into that bottom of the ninth spot to begin with. I guess Helsley got the win, right, because he was pitching the top of the ninth. So if that doesn't happen, we're talking about the Cardinals being swept by the Nationals and feeling a lot different about the way things are going now. Lakota, appreciate you, man, for joining the B-Schaeff Daily Gang. That's the I think it's $5 a month membership to support the channel and everything we're doing here, which helps me more than you guys know. Every time I get one of those, it makes a big difference. So I appreciate that. Brett also said, if I don't get a notification from Passan that the Cardinals are in it somewhere, I might go crazy. A lot of people are feeling that way right now. Aaron predicting that Edman and Carlson, I'm going to assume, are gone by the deadline. I wouldn't have woke up thinking that about Edman this morning, but at this point, it seems like there's smoke there, right? It certainly does. And if the Dodgers and Yankees are both interested in this player, what's that try to tell you? Like, those teams aren't just going to not get the players that they want. One of those teams is getting the job done. The involvement of the White Sox is very bizarre, though. Like, the Cardinals are going to give the thing that the Dodgers want to the Dodgers without getting some of the most elite pieces from the Dodgers. They're going to go over here and take Fetty? All right. I mean, we'll see. They haven't done it yet, so it's not like I can criticize. It's not actually happened. It hasn't actually taken place. So we just got to simmer down for a minute. But it is interesting to think about, isn't it? Definitely interesting to think about. All right. David says, is this the start of a Goldy heat up? It would be sure nice if it was. It was a bummer the other night when he gets number 2,000 and it's in a losing effort, and it's like, all right, nobody can be happy about this, because that was one of the worst Cardinals losses that I've covered since 2016. I mean, that was just the vibes around that whole thing were not strong, not pleasant. So to have him get to be doused with water coolers twice today was cool. I think that was, and he was smiling, man. He wasn't holding that back whatsoever, which was awesome. Yeah, you look at Goldy, man, last 7 games hitting 296 with a 704 slug, 3 homers over his last 7 games, 27 ABs. Last 15 games, 60 ABs. He's hitting 250 only, but he's slugging 550 with 5 homers in his last 15. Still striking out more than you want to see, but a lot of guys do that in MLB these days. So that's a what, 810, 812 OPS for Goldy over the last 15 games. That's notable. That's something for sure. 9 likes to go to get to Mark McGwire. We can do it. I'm not convinced on this 3-way deal stuff. I think Edman goes to New York for Cortez. So that is something that Katie Wu had in her story, that Nestor Cortez for Edman. And that's a swap that we have like history to tell us the Yankees are going to be satisfied with to an extent, right? They traded Jordan Montgomery for an injured Harrison Bader. I couldn't find a more similar comp. And Jordan Montgomery at the time was team controlled for 1 more year. Harrison Bader was team controlled for 1 more year. Edman, same thing for next year. And in the case of Nestor Cortez, he is also under control for next year. And I think he'll be an ARB and probably won't make quite as much money as Tommy. So that's another reason to believe that maybe there's some smoke to that the Yankees could potentially be intrigued by that. Nestor has not been pitching as well lately, and the Yankees feel like the kind of organization that they would just say, all right, we're done with the guy, because it's been a couple weeks of brutal, and it's a deadline, and we haven't won a World Series in too long. We're just going to make something happen here. Maybe the Cardinals could benefit from that, because Nestor's been a solid arm in the past, was great in 2022, dealt with some injuries last year, but he's averaging almost a strikeout per inning, and over his career, he's been more than a K per inning. 99 ERA plus right now, and a FIP just a shade under 4 at 3.99. But again, that feels like more of a deal for next year. It'll help you now. Maybe Nestor is your number 2 in a playoff series, but they don't have a glaring hole at number 5 rotation right now. Their 5th starter is Palante, and he's been their best since May 29th. ERA-wise, that's just a fact. So that's where I get a little bit like, all right, are you really getting better for the now, or is this more about next year? You'll be able to sell it as it's for this year because, Tommy Edman hasn't played a snap, as they'd say in football. He hasn't taken an AB. So what are you really getting from Tommy Edman? Might be better to go ahead and grab Cortez and feel like you've at least got a little bit of protection in case the starter goes down. But then what do you do? Like, if you do that, I'm fond of Tommy Edman. Don't want to see him go. But if it happens, okay, you've got yourself a starter, and we know that those are valuable. Is it a good one? Time will tell on whether it's Nestor or even Fetty, whether those are worthwhile additions. But at that point, what are you doing about the bench? Are you going out and getting a right-handed hitting outfielder that can kind of replace what you thought you could get from Edman, which is currently the Carlson spot on your roster, if we're just kind of doing that roster math? How aggressive are you going to be to actually improve this team? Because they'll be able to spin it that, oh, yeah, Nestor Cortez or Fetty, this is what we needed. But I would still say there are glaring issues at the other parts of the roster that maybe they're not easy to fix, but would certainly seem to be the type of thing the Cardinals should be after trying to address in the next 40 hours or whatever's left. Seth wants me to predict who they get. Yeah, good luck. I don't have a clue, dude. It's a lot of different avenues it could go. If you ask me more likely than not, do I think Edman's going to be traded? I think, yeah, more likely than not, he will be at this point. And is that perhaps why the Cardinals have been so careful not to put him in the field? He had so many setbacks. He had the ankle thing. And at that point, it's like, let's just DH him until we get on the other side of this deadline. Because if we do end up retaining him, no problem. He can ramp up in a week and be ready. If we don't, there's less risk to injuring him because we've been actively shopping him. That might explain the entire thing, honestly. And if so, that would be savvy enough by the Cardinals. Like, yeah, you don't want to, if you've got a deal that's close, you don't want the guy getting hurt, but you also need to be ramping him up because if you're not trading Tommy Edman, you need him soon. So I think that's interesting. But Seth, man, I wish I could tell you. I wish I could tell you. These things sometimes come out of nowhere, and then sometimes they're kind of obvious, right? Bill does not think that the Cardinals trade, that we trade for too much. Owners do not want to increase payroll. Yeah, apparently they don't. That was a report from Katie and JD both today. Siana. You got to stop spelling Michael Ciani's name wrong, everybody. It's not Siana. It's not Ciani. Ciani. His bat lately has been great, says Bill. And it has been. I think he's got the OPS up to 600, which is all I need to see to have him play every single day. Dude, if Michael Ciani's still on this Cardinals team in 3, 4, 5 years, I wouldn't be that surprised. There's a lot to like about his game. Josh says the possible Edman trade would be reminiscent of the Bader trade. Yep, exactly similar in my opinion. Lakota had asked a question about Edman. Has he not gotten much time in Memphis because he's been in trade talks? Well, he's been in Springfield, and the reason for Springfield and not Memphis is simply because of proximity. If I had to guess, it's closer, so he's playing there because it's going to be a longer rehab when he's got the situation that he's got. So as far as why he hasn't been playing the field, it was the ankle first, and now you wonder if Lakota, might be onto something as far as the trade talks. And Lakota, do appreciate you joining the membership tonight, my man. Michael Ciani's play this season makes Victor Scott more available than Tommy Edman. That's from Jacob. I don't know how much value Victor has right now. The AAA numbers have not been strong. That doesn't mean give up on the guy, but it is interesting to note that, even at AAA, he's not really been able to lock it in yet offensively. And so, who's more available? Well, I would say Tommy Edman's probably available if part of the goal is to trim payroll. And that's not what anybody wants to hear, but if that's what's happening, then that's what's happening. Casey, welcome to the B-Schaeff Daily Game. Appreciate you joining the membership tonight here, Casey. And I did it. I almost fat thumbed you and reported you. I'm trying to on my screen. I have to move the notification after I talk about it, and I keep trying to do stuff. The other day, who was it? Kevin, man, poor Kevin. I deleted his comment. That was a super chat. The man gave me money out of his pocket, and I deleted his comment. I felt terrible. Kevin, I'm so sorry about that. Greg says Edman to Dodgers without bringing back a major league pitcher would not make sense. Greg, it doesn't sound like that's what's being discussed, though. I think it would be the pitcher would be Fetty, coming from the White Sox if they can involve a third team. Czar Alexander says that Palante has proven he's been better as a starter, has to stay as a starter, and right now better than Lynn and Michaelis. I don't know if he's better than Lynn and Michaelis. We've seen great starts from both those guys. Maybe not great, but good, and enough of the good to know that, yes, there have been starts where they've given up 10 runs. They both had that, and Palante hasn't. But largely, they've all been very similar. Really, everybody in the rotation has been similar except Sonny And not for the reason you might think. It's not because he's been better. It's honestly because he's been worse over the last month than everybody else. And that's, not what you want from your ace and the guy that was destined to be your ace. When they went out and got Sonny Gray this offseason, it was, let's get a number one. We're getting ourselves a game one starter. Well, you're not getting that from Sonny right now, and he's going to come out guns blazing the next time he pitches, obviously, but getting that from him is going to be important for the Cardinals, I think, over the final 2 months if they're going to make the playoffs. Dempsey, another channel member, says Golden Boy may be heating up. Yeah, Paul Goldschmidt, I mean, if that's who you're talking about, he has, we read his stats. He's been heating up. Dominic, what's going on? Another member. Palante has been the best starter. No way you move him to the pen. Yeah, the comment that was made by Eric, which his super chat, which I do appreciate, he mentioned the pen gets better if Palante goes into it. I wonder if Palante's disposition is better in the rotation. And so you maybe don't get better in the pen if he has to then go into the role that Libby's in right now, which nobody wants to be in that role because it sucks. You don't know what you're doing from day to day, week to week. So I don't know. That's what's tough about it. Palante would be the obvious guy to take out from an experience standpoint, but if you're actually looking at who's going out and helping you win more games, I don't know if that's the case. I would not be displacing Andre Palante for a starter, which is all the more reason I have said in recent weeks, Cardinals shouldn't trade for a starter. They should just understand that unless they're getting an elite number 2 starter to go behind Sonny Gray or maybe ahead of him in a playoff series, just load up on relievers. Add a couple of arms. But now, if you've got Riley O'Brien coming back, maybe they only need to add one arm, but at least do something to the bullpen. Well, now they've taken Gio out of it, which tells you there's going to be a spot open on the 40. It would be an obvious way to upgrade the team. Will they do that? That's what remains to be seen. But that's the route I would have gone, is actually focus on bullpen more than rotation. But if they have half a mind on what's going on next year and they're worried about the ownership kind of pinching down the payroll, then you, as a front office, you have to still think about what happens next year. Even if the fans are like, I'm thinking about today. John, what's up? He says, great win for the Cardinals today. Appreciate you, John O. Jacob said, if what you're saying is true, the DeWitts need to move on. Yeah, and this was reported not by me, right? I'm sharing the reports from Katie and JD today that they basically said that's where this kind of thing is trending at this point, that front office has been kind of informed, not adding a lot of payroll. That's not the way we're looking at this deadline. Don't add future payroll. All right, well, that's tough. Pat Patsker says, can't take on payroll. When do we become the A's? Yeah, fair question, man. Aaron thinks they need Ivan Herrera back up. I would have had Ivan Herrera back up Saturday, to be honest with you. After Dylan's, tough night on Friday, I get it, but he did have options remaining, and I would have used one, to be honest with you. And then I would have brought Ivan back up, and he's a guy off the bench, if nothing else, or he can DH for you. I wouldn't put him behind the plate until I see improvement in the run game, especially right now with the way the pitchers on this roster are struggling to hold runners. But, yeah, I mean, that's not an unreasonable thought, Aaron, is to bring Herrera back up. And that's the roster move I would have made Saturday, just being honest with you. Mr. Intensity said, I'm on late so I can rewind. I'm glad that I can get you on my TV today. It pains me to think about some of y'all watching these videos on TV with a big screen at your house, knowing the low quality of my webcam on my laptop. But you know what? That's part of the game. We added 2 channel memberships tonight. We're building this thing up. Eventually, I'll get myself a dang nicer webcam, and I'll be more inclined to do videos at that point because they'll look better on screen. I kind of forget the way I'm sitting, and you look at yourself in the camera, and you're like, that looks terrible. So I do apologize. My posture's never good. Carl says, I think the front office owes the fans is a change in philosophy. No longer winning now that all of Walt's staff and core are gone. Mo's way has failed. They owe us that much. I don't agree with that, actually. There are a lot of Mo's staff guys that are gone now, right? Walt's staff is not, I mean, that's 20 years ago. That's 15, 17 years ago. That's got nothing to do with anymore. Mo has had a lot of success in St. Louis, and I think a lot of his guys that were part of the most successful years are gone and either running other teams or, we can go down the Mo coaching tree. There's been a lot of guys that have moved on and done some good things. This current front office might have a lot of very talented people in it as well, but clearly I think there's something about the org that has gone a little bit stale in the way that they've approached things. That's not anything personal. That's not anything. I mean, it's just looking at the numbers and the wins and the trend line. It's not been a positive one over the course of a number of years. Mr. Intensity thinks Mo should get James Paxton. I think he already landed somewhere, didn't he? Thought somebody claimed him. Could be wrong about that. Maybe Gio can be part of a DFA swap. I'll be interested to see what happens with Gio because I think, and look, I put a YouTube video out on my channel earlier today kind of giving some quick thoughts on it, but this was not surprising. I was surprised it took this long, not because he was pitching terribly every time he pitched, but if you watch the way he's used, Ollie had no faith in him, and I don't think that was unfounded with the way that he had pitched earlier in the season. Like, you can't use those guys in leverage, and if you can't be used in the role that you were destined to use, or to be used in, then what's your role? What's your utility to the club? I think that's the point that the Cardinals reached with Gio. And the fact that he's got a 2.3 ERA since he came back from the IL, it's been a month. Maybe there is a team that'll say, shoot. Like, if he's not a Royal within 2 days, I might be a little bit surprised, especially after Hunter Harvey goes down for them. Schreiber, I think, went down for their bullpen. They might just have to say, screw it. It might cost us $2.5 million to pick up his waiver claim, but he might have to be a Royal. If I can't think of any other teams off the top of my head that could use him, Kansas City sure could because they're still in the mix. But yeah, I'll be curious to see if the Cardinals are able to trade Gio and maybe eat a little bit of the money to get a nice prospect back, or if they just let the waiver process be because they don't want to eat money and they're trying to scrimp and save everywhere they can, which would be so disappointing because that's not a way to maximize your talent, whether it's big league talent or your talent in the minors. Like, that's tough. That's a tough way to operate, and not really the way the Cardinals are usually willing to spend enough to take advantage of those types of teams, not be that team. And look, they haven't done it yet, but they're reliable reporters saying it's kind of how they're operating right now. So that's a concern, in my opinion. Alex says, I don't care who comes out of the rotation. Yeah, I mean, they've all kind of been the same guy recently. Nobody in the staff has shown enough other than Sonny and Gibby, kind of. If you have a better pitching option, put him in the rotation. Yeah, I agree with that. But I also think, yeah, Gibby's been good enough. Sonny has, you're not taking him out of the rotation. You just need him to be better. So that kind of leaves, Lance Lynn would maybe be the name you'd circle. But even Lynn, I think if you look at maybe 4 of his last 6 or 4 of his last 5 starts have been pretty good. Yeah, because he had the 5 innings scoreless the other day. Was 6-2 before that. Blip on the radar, then 6 shutout innings, 6 2/3 before that. So 4 of his last 5, he's been pretty much nails, and the Cardinals have won 4 of his last 5 starts. The one that was awful gave up 11 to the Nats on July 6th. It happens, not really, but it did that time. So that's just kind of where that is. All right, we passed Mark McGwire. What do we need to do now, folks? If you're just joining the stream, subscribe to the channel. That's the main thing. Daily Cardinals content on this thing. We can hit 100 likes, though. I'm being told right now there's 190 people in here. I don't believe that for a second. But if there is, hit like while you're in here because we should be able to hit 100. Appreciate the comments. I'm trying to roll through them as quick as I can. Jacob mentions that Paxton went to the Bo Sox. Yeah, I knew he was somewhere. I just couldn't remember where. Scrolling down. Eric calling Carl a B-fib. Eric also mentioning that Paxton went to Boston. I'm trying to scroll through to make sure I get my membership comments here. The supporters, I want to make sure I read their stuff, but I'll try to get to everybody as best I can. Lakota said if they're aiming for future years, it could make more sense to directly trade with the Dodgers for prospects, although Edman may not have that big of a return in value for a top prospect. It's a good point, Lakota, but I think the move, if it's a Fetty or even a Nestor Cortez, you're able to basically address the concern that they might have with payroll for next year without admitting that you're doing it. Like, without it looking really glaringly like a salary dump. Because you're still getting back something that you need. That's why I think if you do it for prospects, it doesn't work as well. Because then you could extend out and say, well, why aren't you trading Ryan Helsley? If you're just selling right now, that's a sell move. Why aren't you trading Ryan Helsley for a top 50 prospect or 2 top 100 prospects? Given, Jason Adam went for a top 100 prospect. Which, again, you can't just say, well, that guy did, so we're going to get one too. But Ryan Helsley is better than, he'd be the top relief option on the market. Maybe if Pete Fairbanks is out there, there'd be a case to be made that he's on that level. I think he should be a Cardinal, personally. That would be the number one target I would go out and talk about. The Rays have made plenty of moves. Maybe they've still got one more left in them. And Fairbanks would be my guy. Tanner Scott would be another one from the Marlins. I would get those 2 guys, and I would probably try to find a way to put Carlson somewhere that he's going to get a chance to play, which could be Miami. I don't know, And Skip Schumacher, I don't think is necessarily the guy that's going to have a ton of pull down there, because I don't think he's going to be around long term based on the option being nixed already for him next season. But is there a case of Schumacher would say, yeah, we'll take Dylan under our wing a little bit and run him out there and revitalize his career? I don't know. He could be a throw-in in a Tanner Scott deal. He wouldn't be the reason you get Tanner Scott, is sort of my thought process there. But that's what it is to me, Lakota. I don't think that they can trade Edman for prospects, because then you're selling. That's what that looks like. And if you're selling, there are other guys that make more sense to trade away to really maximize your return for prospects. It's a great question, Lakota. I just think that's the way I view it. Casey, another member, says, if nothing else, I've got the Texas League playoffs to watch here in Springfield if the Cardinals don't make it. There you go. Good to see that. Allison welcoming Casey to the B-Schaeff Daily Gang. That's nice to see. We're all friendly in the gang. That doesn't sound good. Yeah, in the gang that we're in, we're really friendly. Brett says, wonder if we cut out the Sox and do Edman for Bobby Miller. I don't think they'd trade Bobby Miller for Edman, but if they would, I probably would take the shot on that, personally. Mark says, odds they trade Edman and end up re-signing Crawford. Nah, I don't think so. But you did laugh at the end of your comments, so I know you didn't mean it either. Herrera, good as the DH or a pinch hit off the bench. That's from Andy. Yeah, I agree. I thought Pages deserved the shot over Herrera, and I wanted to see Herrera get everyday opportunities to improve on his catching. Not his catching, but his management of base runners. I don't know how much he's really caught. I know there have been some days he's taken off, and he can't catch every day down in AAA. But the one day I did look to notice, like, hey, how many stolen bases did he allow today? It was like they went 3 for 3 against him or something. So I don't really know that I would feel super comfortable continuing to put Herrera behind the plate, but his bat is MLB ready. His bat could be right here, right now, no doubt. 3 to go to get to 100 likes. We can get there. EC wants to know if they would move Lance Lynn to the bullpen. He's done it before. Good against righties. Trading for a starter, then moving Lynn to the pen seems like the best course of action. You could say that, but if they've won 4 of his last 5 starts, are you looking a gift horse in the mouth a little bit? Saying, yeah, we don't need Lance Lynn. We can get Nestor Cortez. It's like, okay, the guy that's given up, 5 runs and then 4 runs before that and 3 homers in the last start. Like, I get it, but these games don't get played on paper. And then if you go a couple of weeks after the deadline and you do all these things and you look up and go, wait a minute, why do we do all that? Then that's maybe not the course of action you're going to want to take. But Daddy Padre just mentioned Nestor to a new league might be a huge uptick. It could be. Going from the AL East to the NL Central could change things. And by the way, I think the Cardinals defense is, as long as you keep Ciani in center field, is better than most. Win at short. Arenado has come around defensively at third. Goldy is still a machine picking balls out of the dirt at first. Ciani in center. And then if Ciani's in center, Nootbaar's in a corner where he belongs, and he's a pretty good athletic defender out there. Yeah, there's a lot to like about a lot of that. No doubt about it. Give me 1 second, everybody. Had to do it. Had to be done. Had to be done. I was talking for too long, and I didn't take a sip of water, and then my eye blood vessel popped out from coughing. All right. Mark said that Katie reporting twice that Edman for Nestor could happen makes it feel like a done deal, but they're waiting to see if the Fetty deal works out first. Is that how this works? Mark, I don't know. That's interesting speculation, though. I mean, anything Katie's reporting, you know that she's trustworthy, right? Everybody knows that. So the fact that it's being reported tells me that there could be maybe a line of like an order of operations to it. Like the Yankees might be like, yeah, we'll give you Nestor for Edman. If you're the Cardinals, are you thinking, well, we like Fetty a little better? For one reason, they know what Eric Fetty's getting paid next year, right? That's already done. Signed, sealed, delivered, $7.5 million. Versus the situation with Nestor, I believe, is he would be an ARP. And sorry for the delay. Plug it in my laptop so it doesn't die on us. So that would be one reason, maybe, Mark, that the Cardinals might prefer Fetty in that case. I don't know from like a competitive standpoint who's the better pitcher. But if the money stuff is that big of a consideration, it's not impossible that you would be right about that, Mark, that they might even be kind of just trying to find the better deal for a guy that's cost controlled, and they don't have to worry about ARB. It seems a little silly because the amounts should be pretty similar, but yeah, you never know. J. Call says Edman could even play second base when Gorman is in a drought or back up short for win. Yeah, and look, I'm not going to sit here and make this the bash on Brandon Crawford hour, but his numbers haven't been great, and he really is only there so that you make sure you got an answer if Mason Wynn goes down. If you had Tommy healthy, I think he could kind of fill both those roles. You'd still probably want another outfielder if you did that. Like Edman takes Crawford's spot, who takes Carlson's spot would then sort of be the way that I would look at it. But all of this is very speculative because Tommy Edman hasn't played the field yet. And I understand there are people on both sides of the aisle right now in comments going, why are you talking about Tommy Edman like he's this automatic thing he hasn't played? And I go, I know. And then people say, well, Tommy Edman's great against lefties. Why would they trade him away for pitching? I'm like, I know. I'm trying to give y'all both sides. I can see both sides of it. We don't know, and the Cardinals don't know. But if you've been waiting for Tommy Edman for 4 months and you thought he'd be there, could it end up being a situation where you're like, hey, maybe I just kind of sell on it now because I don't have to keep waiting and wondering. I don't think the Cardinals are at a point with Edman where like they're fed up with the way that it's gone. I don't know. Maybe they are. But like that's something that you wonder about. If maybe they would be another reason to be willing to talk about this trade is, hey, yes, ideal world Tommy Edman is perfect for our team, but we haven't seen him this year. So maybe we're more willing to make something happen. It was asked about Pete Fairbanks if he had been traded yet. I have not seen that he has been. No. He's a name that I've talked about a lot, though. But, yeah, Lakota mentions it, too. No Pete trade yet. But he's a St. Louis guy, so I just think it would be cool. And a Mizzou guy, for whatever that's worth. Which, to me, is a lot. I'll say it. Blake says the Cardinals need another ace. Yeah. Hey, while we're talking about the stuff they could use, yeah, just go get a guy that hits like Brent Rooker, but isn't Brent Rooker because the A's said they're not trading him or are very unlikely to trade him, whatever it was. Andrew says, remember a few years ago when Mike Shannon mentioned on the air that the Wits were planning to sell the team? Yeah, well, that wasn't true, though. That was just, God love Mike Shannon, but he occasionally was known to say some things later on in his career that didn't make the most sense. But that's why we loved him. Well, we loved him for a lot of reasons. But I never, and there were people who would sour. I would see the tweets of it like, I don't really like when Mike Shannon's doing the game anymore because I don't know who's playing. I don't know what's going on. It's like, you are listening for the wrong reasons. You need to enjoy every last bit of Mike Shannon. That is a legend right there. And I always told people that. But yeah, no, as far as the selling the team thing, nope. Do you see him having sold the team? I mean, it's been several years since that comment. So I don't think that's something that was ever had any real traction. Sam says, how would you feel about the 3-team trade with Edman going to the Dodgers and the Cards getting Fetty? Or would you rather them go for Nestor straight up? Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering. I like the idea of the 3-team trade maybe a little bit more, if only because there could be other pieces involved. Like, I think Dylan Carlson should go be a White Sox if they're doing that deal. That should be part of it. Like, no, you take him. You take him and you play him. You take him and you give him a shot. I'm being a little facetious. But also, like, could there be in that 3-team deal other things coming back to the Cardinals? We don't know. If it was the Yankees deal for Nestor, it would feel like more 1-for-1 to me. And maybe even the Cardinals adding in a flyer prospect to go with Tommy. I could be wrong about that. And also, that part of Mark's comment earlier of, like, why hasn't that happened if it's been reported? The Yankees might not be ready to do it yet because they might be trying to trade for Blake Snell, or they might be trying to trade for a big fish that then they can turn around and go, okay, we've got that worked out. We can afford now to trade Cortez, where otherwise, we were a little bit more leery of doing so. BJ asks, any chance Goldy is moved? I'm going to say 0, none. None chance Goldy is moved. And I've been consistent about that for weeks when he was struggling, and now that he's hitting better, nothing has changed. The Cardinals aren't selling. Again, if this Edman thing happens, it's not going to be, I don't believe, for prospects. It's going to be for a starting pitcher that goes into their rotation and is cost-controlled for 2025 as well. That's the circumstance under which Tommy Edman's getting moved. Paul Goldschmidt is an expiring contract. So if you were a selling team, much like I said, hey, if you're selling Edman for prospects, you might as well trade Helsley, it'd be even more true to trade Goldy because people would look and say, oh my gosh, he's looked like Paul Goldschmidt a little bit more for the last few weeks, and he's a mercenary that can come help us win a World Series. Like, go get him. Totally would understand that. Cardinals aren't selling, though. And I do not subscribe to, well, you could move Burleson to first base. There's this thing about Burleson, like everybody's like, oh, he's played first base. He has, but if you go back and look at the game logs, not very much at all, even in the minors. So Alec Burleson's not, I don't think necessarily just going to become an everyday first baseman on August 1st. Like, could that be the deal next year if they don't re-sign Goldy? For sure. But mid-season, I'm just not so sure that that's what they're going to be looking to do. And from the clubhouse aspect of it, like, they're just not trading Paul Goldschmidt. There's no way. That would be more shocking to me than just about anything else that could happen. And maybe that sounds crazy, but I'm just giving you my vibe, and I've been consistent on that for weeks. And look, I get it, because then you can move Burleson to first, and then, well, look, if Jordan Walker was raking, you might have a little bit stronger of an argument, because then you would be able to say, and then bring up Walker to play a corner outfield where Burleson's been existing, but they don't even have that right now. But it's more about the Goldy of it all. It's in the same way, maybe not a direct comparison, but they weren't going to trade Yachty or Waino at one of those deadlines either. I know that they haven't, they spent their whole career here, and Goldy hasn't, but Goldy has that level of respect, and he's earned that too. Andrew wants to know if the like button is the heart. I think it's just like a thumbs up, but I guess I've never watched my own live stream to know what that looks like. But most YouTube videos, it's just like a thumbs up thing, I think. But we did get to 100, so preach on that. And now I don't even have like player jersey numbers that I can say, hey, let's get to McGuire, when I said, well, that was more of the 70 home run thing. But normally I'm like, let's get to Waino, let's get to 50. We're over 100. I got nothing left. Well, I don't even know what I would compare it to. Let's get to, like, there's literally nothing sports related. Who's got triple-digit sports numbers? Like dirt track racing? I have no idea. I don't have anything for you. Just keep liking it, though. Gosh dang. And subscribe to the channel, too. And if you want to make a comment, you got to subscribe. But don't worry, it's free to do that. Not free to join the channel membership, but, that's worth it, too. A lot of people would tell you. Allison says, when you get the chance to go, you should. It's definitely an adventure. And I think we're talking about Wrigley. Yeah, Wrigley, I was supposed to go to Wrigley. I don't know if it's going to get, I don't know if it's going to happen, because I don't have it approved through KMOV, so I don't know if I'm going to make that trek on my dime. But dang, it's going to be fun next weekend if you are going to Chicago. Lakota said I'm going to be there Saturday, maybe Friday too. Yeah, don't make me mad tonight, guys. I wanted to be there. I really did. Gunner said at winter warm-up, Mo stated he thought that there would be some room in the payroll if needed. What happened since then to cause the ownership to apparently try to cut payroll? Great question, Gunner. Yep, that's the whole thing, man. That's the whole thing. I can't say this kind of came out of nowhere, but you got multiple outlets reporting that front office is being told, hey, don't add for 2025's payroll. Now, Gunner, to be clear, we're talking about 2025's payroll in terms of the Cardinals at this deadline don't want to add to next year's payroll. I think they could add somebody making money this year. Maybe not a lot of it, but somebody making a little money may be possible. But, yeah, man, you're right, Gunner. That exactly did happen at winter warm-up. And, sometimes things get said by the org that turn around and they just they go away. They're just, hey, didn't you say that? Well, I don't know. I don't remember that. All right, well. But you're right. That was said. So, and Eric says, less clarity on TV revenue and attendance has been way down. Attendance has been down. I remember also at winter warm-up, they were very confident about, well, I wouldn't say very confident. Bill DeWitt III indicated that they were well on track with ticket sales to get to the 3 million plateau again. I don't know if that's the case at this point. I remember when he had that interview with Martin Kilcoyne, I think, in which he said that some of the comments that people did not really appreciate about, if fans don't show up, we just won't spend, that sort of vibe to his comments, and said it was silly that people would say, they're going to boycott because they don't like the direction of the team. Some of those comments happened in that interview, and in the same interview, he sounded less confident about 3 million, but I haven't honestly kept up on it to know what they're tracking or trending toward in recent weeks. Eric does not like the trade of Paredes for Morel because he thinks Paredes is better, and so that makes the Cubs better. I think here's what I'll say. I think Paredes will be better for the Cubs than Morel was for the Cubs, but I think Morel for the Rays will be better than Morel for the Cubs. I think the Rays are going to get the most out of Christopher Morel. Morel reminds me of Wilson Contreras. I'm just talking vibes. And if you think about the way that Wilson was kind of pushed out of the Cubs org under Jed Hoyer, and think about how they did it to Christopher Morel today, I'm trying to draw a through line through those two things. I think that they for all the reputational whatever that people have, the thoughts people have about the Cardinals about, they're stodgy, they're kind of buttoned up, that sort of organization. I think the Cubs are kind of getting that way a little bit too. But granted, production is what matters at the end of the day. So if you're Morel and last year you had an 821 OPS, life's good. Even if he's, a exuberant personality, that's great because the vibes are strong. If he's hitting 199 with a 676 OPS this year, 10% below league average OPS plus, well, maybe the personality is not as much of something that is a positive. But I don't know if that's fair to Christopher Morel. I think he's going to be a great Ray. I would trade for Morel in fantasy now that he's a Ray. Is actually something that I might kind of look into after I'm done with this. If my fantasy league mates aren't sitting here going, haha, I'll beat you to the punch. Jake Call says, crazy idea. If Gorman, Walker, Herrera got traded for Mike Trout, it'd be a terrible trade. I wouldn't trade Gorman straight up for Mike Trout. Mike Trout's not healthy, guys, and I don't think he's ever going to be again. I think it's Jover, as the kids would say about Mike Trout. Clean MRI, that's the most recent news on Trout. Look, man, look at his recent seasons. The numbers are outstanding, but is he ever going to be healthy again? It's like prime Byron Buxton territory with the injury stuff. It's like Royce Lewis, the guy, he's awesome when he plays. Is he healthy? I don't know, man, on Mike Trout. So, no, you're not trading Jordan Walker for Mike Trout. I know, sounds crazy, but I think I stand by that. If he was healthy, it's totally different. Yeah, I'm doing all of those guys. But I haven't seen Mike Trout healthy in a while. So, and maybe I'm being reactionary to that. But and just consider, too, I think it was J. Cole who had that. If they're talking payroll concerns, they're not getting Mike Trout because that's money. Trout's knee is gonzo. Yeah, man, he's had a lot of. It sucks, dude. To think that we're now talking about Mike Trout in the context of one of those questions that you see on social media, where it's like, if you could give anybody a clean bill of health for their whole career, who would it be in sports history? Mike Trout should not be on that list, man. But now he probably has to be because it's just been too many years in a row. Kevin says, what about that Cubs dynasty that lasted 1 year? Yeah, no kidding. That's been a minute, right? Yeah, they've had a lot of organizational change since then. That's been 8 years ago. It's not lost on me either that the first year that I covered MLB as a credentialed media was the year the Cubs won the World Series. That's not lost on me. And that the Cardinals haven't done much of anything since I started. They did make the NLCS in 2019. But then I was there in Washington, D.C. when they got swept. I might be the problem, guys, is what I'm saying here. And Kevin, I'm so sorry again about deleting your super chat comment last week. That made me feel so bad. Probably made you feel probably bad too. Sorry about that. Mike Trout is this generation's Ken Griffey Jr. Ooh, I don't hate that comp at all. David wants to know Kevin Pillar or Rooker. I mean, Rooker is the better. I got to look at Pillar's stats again, but Rooker's the better offensive force. But, man, Pillar has been playing some good baseball. 824 OPS this year. I guess it's kind of similar, too, because Pillar has not always been this type of hitter. But Brent Rooker is, he's put it together for a couple of years at least. But Rooker, but Pillar can play center, can he? I know he used to. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what he's been playing this year predominantly. He's definitely a more impactful fielder than Rooker would be. Yeah, he's played some center field this year, and has done okay at it. So there you have that. Well, we're past midnight. Lakota says smoke is heavy for Edman. Carlson's writing is on the wall. Are there any surprising names you think may get moved? The most surprising could be if they decide, if Ravon Herrera's got value to somebody, they say, look, we're trusting in Pajes and we're making that happen. That would be the only surprising one. Like, do I think they're moving Gorman? I would be surprised. But, I mean, that's enough to talk about and say, hey, Gorman, I mean, look, if there's a team that would give you something big for him, then it's possible. But that would also surprise me. But I'm not predicting that. If I were going to be, like, outside the box, I would go, well, maybe Herrera. But, look, they might not be as active as we kind of think. When we're talking about what's the surprise move that they can make, that implies the notion of they would actually make some moves. We'll have to see. Blake says Crochet for Libby and Carlson. No, that's not a thing. Crochet would be, and look, I'm just going to spitball. Crochet would be like Jordan Walker and then pitching. or Crochet would be Tink Hence and another big time. Like, you're not, that's a big ask. You're not getting him for scraps. Andy says Gorman is my man. So Andy does not want to see Gorman dealt. He probably won't be, is the good news. Zach says, I don't know his contract details, but I'd like to see Tyler Anderson from the Angels. Yeah, I'll try to look up his contract info for you as I use the Google machine. Left-hander has not really. Here's the thing about Anderson. He kind of feels Fetty-esque, where he's not striking out a bunch of guys. But, man, Anderson has been good for a long time, not striking out a bunch of guys. Not good last year, but 22, he was an all-star. I remember him in fantasy that year. I'm like, he doesn't strike out anybody. How is it possible that he's this good? But he was. But that's kind of Michaelis-y, right? Like, you like Miles Michaelis when it's going well, but then when he's not sharp, he doesn't miss bats, so it can go south on you quick. And I think that's sort of the comp I'd make. Tyler Anderson is almost like the lefty Michaelis in some ways. And look, Anderson's had some great MLB years. Miles Michaelis has had some great MLB years. This is not, one of his strong years, but that's still out there. And he is a free agent after next year. Another guy under control for 25. Looks like $13 million will be the salary for Anderson next year. So maybe more than the Cardinals are going to be able to commit to, which is kind of crazy to think. Zach says he has had 8 to 10 Ks a few times this year. Yeah, that's fair. But, I'm just looking at 99 Ks in 130 innings as sort of my baseline. Paco says, fun, unlikely thought on the 3-team deal. LA gets Crochet and Tommy. STL gets Fetty and Luis Robert Jr., with both teams sending prospects to the White Sox. That would be fun. Still send Dylan to the White Sox, though. That's just a personal favor to Dylan at this point. Crochet, though, I think is unlikely to get moved because of the demands that he gets extended. But I guess if he gets sent to L.A., maybe they'll extend him because they got money. What do they care? Hunter wants to see the Cardinals interested in Tanner Scott, and I do too. I think that'd be great. You can find, I don't know exactly how everything would shake out in that bullpen, but I think that would be a nice guy to go get. You would probably have to figure out what you think of Libby at that point, is what I was trying to avoid saying. But, right now, you don't think a lot of Libby. Has struggled recently. David says Crochet would cost Tink Hens and Quinn Matthews. You're on the right track. Yeah, that is anybody that you're going to want to not trade, that's who they're going to want for Crochet. And then some. Blake wants to know how much salary cap left did they have next year. Well, there is no salary cap in baseball, but there may be a self-imposed limitation is what we're starting to realize about this, about where the ownership group might be on this stuff, based on reporting from today. Tanner Scott would probably cost Hens with the way that relievers are going. I don't think so, Eric, only because he's a pure rental. But I can't say you're wrong. And if that's true, obviously Tanner Scott won't be a Cardinal. But yeah, I hear you. Relievers, like for a while I was saying the reliever prices weren't actually very, like people were kind of overreacting. It's that thing of we have to pretend like every deal that's made is so crazy. And I'm like, yeah, not really. A lot of these have been pretty much par for the course. The Jason Adam one was a little bit interesting because I think they got a 76 overall in MLB prospect for him. But that being said, the public prospect rankings aren't always the best thing to use on July 29th because those have not been updated for some organizations. I know Pipeline does like an update in Baseball America, but largely those get their biggest updates in the offseason. And guys play above what you thought they were, and then they turn into top prospects. So that's part of why it's a little bit difficult to say, well, 76 overall prospect, then Tanner Scott's going to be worth that. Well, we don't really know. Guppy might as well package Prieto in any package because of Gorman and J.J. Weatherholt. I'm not doing anything yet because of J.J. Weatherholt because he's too far away to know. But once he gets to Double-A and then is performing well, then you can start to be like, okay, yeah, maybe we can figure something out with the depth of the second base position. But no, it can go quick, man. And I would mention Brendan Donovan as well. Like he's second baseman that can play that position if you needed him to. Obviously, he's been basically their mainstay left fielder so far. Has anybody seen, and I should probably know this, but I don't, if they've figured out where they're going to send J.J. Weatherholt? I'll be curious to see where he starts. John says, does the ownership ever consider doing a rebuild if money is an issue? At what point would they try something different? I think they don't, John, and the reason is because a rebuild would mean fans stop coming, and fans stop coming mean even less revenue. And in everything they've always said, wouldn't really be able to do it without making sure the turnstiles stay going. And they haven't been going this year, but they did sell a lot of the tickets in the offseason. So, is this going to be that point where if they don't get back into the playoffs and reignite the interest from the fan base, that trend line of lesser support at the ballpark continues next year, for which they have not yet sold the tickets, and now we're talking about a real problem. I would think they would almost be more likely to sell the team than to truly try to tank and become one of those teams. But I don't think either of those things are going to happen. Brett says, is Fairbanks still realistic after ownership comments? Actually, yes, because he only makes $3.6 million next year. He has a $300,000 incentive. So let's call it $4 million for next year. That's not too bad. And he's making a little less than that this year, I think. It's a $7 million option for 2026, which if he continues to pitch well, you would probably pick that up. Brett also thinks Tanner Scott will be too expensive because who all will be in on him. Yeah, top-notch lefty, that makes sense. Jason Adam did blow up the market a little bit. It was strong, but that was the one that made people go, oh boy, but we might just be overreacting to that. We'll see. We'll see what the next couple of trades look like. David asked if JJ can play first base. I'm sure he can. I just don't think he has any need to. Middle infielder. He's going to play shortstop, actually, at first. I don't know how long they'll stick him with that because obviously the Cardinals have a shortstop, Mason Wynn. But again, you can't necessarily go, well, you got Mason Wynn, don't play JJ at short. No, play him at short because that'll continue to hone his skills to be as good as he can be at any place he plays because short's more difficult to play than second. Eric is curious what's going on with Weatherholt. All the other prospects are either at low A or whatever, have not heard a word about him. Yeah, I was just wondering that. I haven't heard it either, and I don't think it's weird. I think they're just probably taking some time figuring it out. Andy wants Luke and Baker to come up. He would have utility on your bench. I'll say that. If you get in a world where you've got Edman who can play short and center, you maybe don't need an additional outfielder on your bench. It's either him or Ciani that's your fourth outfielder. And then if Crawford is, made redundant by Edman's presence as well, then all you would need out of that last bench spot is potentially a slugger. And Luke and Baker could fit that for sure. Could fit that for sure, man. I could see it. J. Call says money don't like spending money. Might just re-sign Waino. Stick him in the outfield to save money. Yeah, I don't think they will. You meant Mozeliak, not money. I saw your correction on that. Tyler Anderson would not be a good addition. We already have a soft-tossing righty. Don't need a lefty, too. Yeah, I said he'd be the left-handed Michaelis, and I know that maybe doesn't excite a bunch of people. Casey asks, how do you think the renovation public funding rumors from earlier will be looked at if payroll is limited? Not fondly. They're just going to need sports betting to get legalized in Missouri to get that, because then they'll be able to get the money they need. But I wouldn't trust Missouri politicians to do that either. So it could get very interesting, Casey, to answer your question. It's a very good question as well. You guys have all asked very good questions tonight, and I'm sure there are some things that I didn't get to and I missed. But it's 12:30 a.m., and my kid wakes up at 8 a.m. at the latest, and I've got a lot of work left to do tonight because I've got to edit this podcast. So appreciate you guys as always. We are going to wrap it up there. Thank you to the 2 new members who joined the channel. Thank you to Eric for the super chat. A little money in my pocket. Appreciate that a whole lot. Makes it worth the time. And you guys commenting and liking and subscribing really makes it worth the time. Thank you guys so much. That's going to do it for this edition of the show. We will talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily and B-Schaeff Daily Live. Make sure as well to send me DMs if I didn't answer your question. I'm at B-Schaefer12 on Twitter. If I didn't get to you and it really is pressing, DM me. I'm 30 years old, BC, not 35. I don't look old. My facial hair looks ridiculous. That's why you thought I was older than I am. Usually I hear, if I shaved, I would look young. I would look 22. And not to say that's a good thing. Anyway. All right, that'll do it. Appreciate you guys. Peace. Couldn't find the button.